You've been shown the countdown clock. Last chance for meaning, final hour for the soul, only 12 sunsets before collapse cleans the timeline and vindicates your tribe. This is not new. It's the oldest sales tactic with better typography. Today, it wears magnesium white thumbnails and crimson fonts that pulse like a wound. The promise isn't salvation, it's certainty, the narcotic that arrives when the future is narrowed to a tunnel you can finally manage. Buy the supplement, join the secret Sangha, upgrade to premium calm before the grid fails. The rhythm is liturgy, scarcity, urgency, purchase, relief. If you stay, I will not offer hope. I will name the economy of hope's counterfeit, how apocalypse wellness prints awe from panic, launders status through catastrophe, and sells you belonging by rehearsing extinction with better music. The algorithm is the new priest of the end. It knows the curves that keep you awake, the ones that spike when a headline contains both collapse and solution. Attention flares around edges, pathogens, wars, climate thresholds, debt ceilings, new plagues of meaninglessness measured in chartreuse graphs. The machine does not conspire. It amplifies whatever couples tightly to human fear. So apocalypse becomes UX, a tight funnel where distress is harvested, cooled by a voice that says, I understand, then routed through an offer that smells like absolution. This ritual, this retreat, this guide to nervous system resilience during grid failure, mercy packaged as survivor chic. We are no longer praying for enlightenment, we are preening for after. Dharma is terrible for this market because it refuses spectacle as a business model. It insists on slow causality, on banal restitution, on the unglamorous art of not lying when your status depends on a lie. It does not flatter you with the illusion that collapse will edit your past. It does not promise that disaster will crown your grievances with halo-light Dharma, does not guarantee that your enemies will be humiliated by history. Apocalypse Wellness guarantees it and calls the gloating prophetic compassion. There is also the pornography of purity by fire. When you feel cornered by your own compromises, the fantasy of a cleansing burn is erotic. After the crash, you will finally be honest, finally strong, finally simple. That's not spirituality. That's nostalgia for a difficulty you imagine yourself equal to. Real difficulty is not cinematic. It's the spreadsheet you owe, the apology you fear, the neighbor you dislike and must still defend. Apocalypse replaces these with a stage where virtue is a mood and logistics are somebody else's problem until the flood reaches your street. Why does doomsday sell better than Dharma? Because it converts the unbearable ambiguity of being a person among persons into moral weather that needs only witness and alignment. It is easier to chant, "It's all burning," than to ask who lit what and who profits. It is easier to rehearse the end than to end a habit. It is easier to imagine history as a courtroom where you are finally seen than to walk into a literal room and face someone you harmed the market knows. It packages ease as courage and panic as lucidity. Stay. I will strip the glamour from countdowns, audit the commerce of collapse, and show how spiritual branding discovered that dread is the most renewable fuel. I will not comfort you with optimism. I will insult the addiction that calls pessimism depth. If your conviction needs catastrophe to feel vivid, you are not awake. You are cosplaying inevitability. We can do better than theater with sirens. Every doomsday brand has a clock. The clock is a liturgy that converts time into virtue. The fewer minutes remaining, the holier your urgency feels. Scarcity is not just a pricing lever, it is a cosmogony. The world narrows, choices burn away, and at last you may replace discernment with tempo, where Dharma asks, "What is true?" The clock asks, "How fast can you agree?" Speed sanctifies conformity and calls it clarity. Subscription renewals bloom at the edge. Panic is the frictionless checkout. The countdown does not need facts. It needs cadence. It arranges headlines into doom choruses that rhyme enough to feel inevitable. Systems failing, institutions collapsing, supply chains fraying, psyches breaking. Inside the rhythm, the offer arrives. Cleaner than history, cheaper than responsibility. Buy the bunker of the heart. Learn apocalypse breath. 7 steps to resilience after civilization. Merchants of ending trade in afterglow before the event. You can tell because the images are beautiful in ways that real collapse never is. Ash in a color grade that complements skin, ruins in golden hour, winds that never smell like rot. This is not preparation, it's aesthetic prophylaxis against accountability. Scarcity as sacrament also baptizes exclusion. When there is only so much time, there is only so much tenderness. You will be told to choose your tribe before the sirens' tribes compute faster than communities. They run on loyalty bypasses that skip disagreement. In doomsday wellness, dissent becomes treason because treason threatens cohesion, and cohesion is needed to monetize fear. The more the clock ticks, the more expensive nuance becomes. Dharma dies at that speed because Dharma's organ is conscience, not adrenaline. Conscience metabolizes slowly. It keeps receipts. It resists the glamour of now. Notice too how scarcity blesses leaders, the ones who can translate dread into choreography. They will lower their voices and raise their eyebrows. They will offer maps. They will acquire debt in your attention lender's ledger with the phrase, "I'll be blunt." Bluntness under countdown is indistinguishable from necessity. The line between emergency order and spiritual abuse thins until only a tone remains to tell them apart. Many cannot tell. They are tired. Clocks tire people. But the cruelest trick is intimacy sold as urgency. Apocalypse brands will give you rooms that feel like war councils. You will speak in whispers. Phones will be stacked face down like offerings. Tears will count double because time is short. You will mistake arousal for depth, isolation for trust, heaviness for truth. And all the while, someone will be routing your dread through a payment processor as frictionlessly as possible, because friction is for people who have time. Dharma's answer is boring and therefore invisible to the market. No countdown, not because time is endless, but because panic is a false sacrament. When the clock is removed, you will discover that your urgency was a costume that concealed cowardice, and that your despair was a hobby that concealed power. Clocks make heroes of the timid by letting them pose. Clocks make products of the hungry by letting them feel chosen. Unplug the clock, and half the holiness in the room evaporates. What remains is the work. Let's say it without perfume. Doom is lucrative because it anchors a clean value chain. Capture attention with threat, stabilize with velvet cadence, upsell with responsible preparation, retain with serial revelations of new edges. What looks like prophecy is simply retention management. The churn event is relief. The anti-churn is evergreen anxiety. So apocalypse wellness must keep you almost saved, too serene, and you cancel, too terrified, and you freeze. The sweet spot is agitated loyalty, a loyal mammal whose amygdala trembles, but whose wallet still opens. Brands need angles. Apocalypse grants it immediately. The rebel against sleepwalking institutions, the canary of compassion, the stoic prophet with spreadsheets, the mystic who saw this before the headlines. Each angle pairs with product lanes, survivalist minimalism, sell knives and silence, bioregional mysticism, sell retreats and heirloom seeds, nervous system prep, sell breathwork and blankets, digital arc building, sell communities and codes. The genius is not evil, it is fit. Align archetype with cart, camouflage the cart as a calling. This economy also needs villains to outcompete other doom merchants. Competitors become deniers, sellouts, compromised monks, corporate chaplains. The algorithm rewards combat because combat signals stakes. But notice how the stakes are always narratively crisp: betrayal, purity, contamination. The stakes rarely involve the boring nouns that change rooms: committees, budgets, votes, minutes. That's because apocalypse wellness is allergic to the procedural. Process feels like a waste when the end is near Dharma. Bets everything on procedure because procedure is ethics over time. Monetized dread has a signature sound, gravitas without governance. You will hear the careful voice. You will not see the ledger. You will hear about the children. You will not see the child care. You will be told about supply chains and spiritual triage. You will not be asked to staff a food pantry next Tuesday. The brand converts care into coverage, coverage that never touches a noun that can be audited. Here's the philosophical sin: catastrophe branders smuggle teleology back into secular life. History becomes a character with preferences, especially your preferences. Collapse becomes a purifying river that will validate your identity by erasing the ones you envy or fear. This is narcotic metaphysics, meaning acquired by catastrophe rather than conduct. Dharma hates this because it turns action into weather and responsibility into forecast. Why does this work? Because dread is a shortcut to coherence. In a swamp of stimuli, catastrophe is a clarifying filter. What matters is what I can carry if the world ends. But catastrophe is an editor with an agenda. It cuts others first: the complicated, the dependent, the ones who slow your sprint to the lifeboat. If your spirituality feels easier when the imagined boat gets smaller, you haven't found depth. You've found a moral diet that starves the inconvenient. The prophet used to wander deserts. Now he refreshes dashboards. Feeds are eschatologies that reset every hour. They create an eternal immanence where nothing concludes and everything threatens to. In that limbo, apocalypse wellness thrives because it offers the shape of an ending in a world that refuses to end. The feed's cruelty is not misinformation, it is malformation, the repeated training of your attention to crave crescendos without outcomes. You become a connoisseur of almost. Almost is great for engagement, it is fatal for character. Character grows by completions, finishing a hard thing, enduring a dull thing, apologizing through apocalypse wellness keeps you in the vestibule, vigilant, vibrating, verbose. Your identity becomes an antenna, Antennas hear, they do not build. The prophet posture pays with the coin of premonitions. It avoids the invoice of decisions. Dharma charges the invoice, feeds wave it for another reel. Algorithmic prophecy also prefers archetypes over neighbors. Feeds scale generic dread. Neighbors insist on particulars. The smell of a kitchen, the hour a truck arrives, the name of the person who keeps the boiler from exploding. Apocalypse influencers will speak of the vulnerable like a chorus. They will rarely say which elderly woman needs her prescription filled today. The distance between the chorus and the name is the distance between apocalypse and Dharma. Dharma walks that distance, or it is cosplay. Worse, the feed trains moral taste towards spectacle of failure. You scroll to watch institutions wobble. The wobble is proof you were right to be separate. The pleasure has a theological flavor, vindication by implosion. Every failure out there pre-excuses a failure in here. Your community need not grow teeth. The world will soon be toothless. Why reconcile when collapse will reconcile all things by removing alternatives? You are no longer tempted by peace. You are tempted by the elegant absolution of ruin. Meanwhile, the body learns vigilance as a hobby. It feels active. It is sugar. When real emergency arrives, a person on your threshold, sweating, asking, you will discover that vigilance is not capacity. Capacity is boring. Sleep, neighbors, committees, skill. Apocalypse wellness outsource those to vibe. The vibe cashed out at the worst time. The feed is not wicked. It is a mean amplifier. If you pour Dharma into it, it will sound like questions, contrition, names. If you pour apocalypse into it, it will sound like climax without consequence. You choose the liquid. The platform chooses the volume. Most choose volume. Then they call the echo a revelation. Apocalypse wellness flatters a secret wish to be right when it matters most. Precisely because we were mediocre in daily ethics, we fantasize about a finale where our minor clarities become crowns, disaster supplies moral steroids. Every opinion hardens into identity, every suspicion into foresight, every grievance into prophecy. It is intoxicating to imagine that the universe is staging a third act to vindicate our taste. That intoxication is called eschatological narcissism, the belief that history is waiting to applaud your suspicion. From here grow the sects of clean fear, homesteader sanctities, bunker benevolences, ascetic prepper monkhoods. Some are practical, many are pageants, where virtue equals isolation plus competence filmed in soft evening light. The ecological grief underneath is real. The conversion of that grief into aesthetic survivalism is not. It selects for lonesome heroics and against boring solidarities that require patience with flawed humans who vote badly and talk loudly. You want a fellowship. What you build is a brand of noble aloneness sponsored by knives. Disaster purity also invents ritual enemies. The impure are those who still believe in institutions, who like cities, who want schools, who trust boring experts. They are mocked as normies sleepwalking into extinction. Mockery is the sugar that coats despair. It creates a carnival where you can be joyful about having no future, because your joy is really the joy of belonging to the few who know the market packages this as clarity. Dharma calls it cowardice in chorus. There is an uglier edge. Apocalyptic purity often racializes resilience without saying the word. The imagined future is stripped of others' messier claims. Landscapes are emptied of the poor. Community shrinks to those who share your recipes and your reading list. You call it localism? Sometimes it is. Often it is effective gentrification projected onto time, cleansing the future of those who complicate your calm. Philosophically, this is a refusal of tragic pluralism, the adult recognition that competing goods collide and must be negotiated, not annihilated. Apocalypse wellness promises an end run around negotiation. It imports an ether of inevitability in which differences will be smoothed by shortage and washed by fire. But shortage seldom civilizes. It weaponizes small advantages. Fire rarely purifies. It chooses winners foreordained by storage, proximity, luck. If your goodness expects disaster to do ethics for you, your goodness is a fair weather costume for bad weather. The alternative is not optimism, it is refusal. Refusal to let catastrophe do your metaphysics. Refusal to outsource meaning to weather. Refusal to schedule your courage for later when the cameras are better. Eschatological narcissists love the mirror of the final day because it shows them already complete. Dharma shatters the mirror now and hands you a broom. All markets must eventually soothe their customers. Apocalypse merchants sell consolations that function as indulgences. After you purchase the sacrament, you are relieved of duties that the old world made tedious. You can't fix institutions. They're dying. You can't trust neighbors. Build pods. You can't repair harm. There's no time. Consolation becomes cosmic permission to shrink your radius of care, while calling the shrinkage realism a radius that contracts while your rhetoric expands is the geometry of a liar, sometimes a sincere one. These consolations come in three flavors. The first is heroic stoicism. You harden into classical virtues with cinematic posture. Fewer needs, fewer ties, fewer words. The second is therapeutic sovereignty. You construct a dome of self-regulation that filters the world until only manageable signals enter, then call the dome wisdom. The third is mystical bypass. You baptize withdrawal in metaphysics, samsara burns, I will not pour water on illusions. All three sell. All three are counterfeit if they replace contact with choreography. Commerce loves consolation because it is renewable. Fear spikes, purchase soothes, fear returns, subscription renews. But consolation also changes your epistemology. You begin to prefer sentences that feel stabilizing over sentences that can be disproven. You trade truth for temperature. The room grows gentler and less real because reality is abrasive. Dharma is abrasive. It rubs off your excuses. Consolation preserves them with balm. There is a political spillover. Consolation teaches you to spectate rather than situate. You become a knower in exile, not a neighbor in debt. Neighborhoods become content. Crises become aesthetic backdrops for your stoicism reel. You will donate to the right causes and feel the warm trance of having contributed. Contribution is not contact. The difference is fingerprints. Who can feel yours? We must also name the gendered marketing of consolation, soft apocalypse for women, nervous system sanctuaries, maternal arcs of resilience, hard apocalypse for men, edge tools, operational calm. Both fantasize competence without community. Both are stage sets for the refusal to be changed by others. Both are cowards compared to the boring heroics of committees that meet badly and still meet, of bylaws written by people who wanted to write poems, of budgets adopted by people who would rather meditate. This isn't romance, it is civilization. If your anarchism, survivalism, or mysticism removes you from accountable proximity, it is not depth, it is a premium escape room themed The End. Leaving early is allowed, calling it enlightenment is theft. When secular apocalypses fatigue, sellers import afterlives to keep the funnel warm. Reincarnation becomes a content farm. Tales of prior collapse survived by souls like yours. Heaven becomes brand extension, premium tiers of peace, access to teachers post-grid. Even skepticism becomes a lane. Agnostic resilience, spiritual but prepper. The common thread is leverage. Death talk as depth token. Mention mortality, appear serious. Link mortality to a product, appear responsible. This strategy works because death clarifies values for a second. The trick is to loop that second into engagement rather than arrangement. Arrangement is what you owe after clarity, wills, reconciliations, policy. Engagement is the feeling of clarity without its costs. Apocalypse wellness keeps you in feeling by stitching death to aesthetic meaning, candlelit vigils on camera, vows made in captions, grief arranged as proof of attunement. The dead become set dressing for a brand of tenderness that never has to become infrastructure. Meanwhile, doctrine bends. Teachings, once aimed at de-selfing, become tools for self-curation under threat. Emptiness becomes permissible grief reduction. Compassion becomes audience management during emergency. Refuge becomes IP. The eschatological register gives everything an organ tone. People stop laughing. Laughter would puncture the trance and reintroduce proportion, the first casualty of branded doom. What could Dharma sound like here? Like punctuality, showing up, like jurisdiction, knowing what is yours to repair, like refusal, not letting death be a costume for becoming more interesting than your duties, like small, the scale at which vows can be kept. None of this records well. All of it keeps rooms from breaking when the weather actually does. If apocalypse is a camera, Dharma is a ledger. Cameras are thrilling, ledgers are rude. Cameras seek climaxes, ledgers seek balance. Balance is not aesthetic, it is arithmetic with faces. When the faces are still there, after the clip ends, you are doing Dharma. When the faces are replaced by angles and music, you are doing marketing for mortality. Here is the indecent conclusion. Doomsday sells because it flatters the self we would like to keep, the one that never had to negotiate, apologize, or share a microphone. Apocalypse Wellness offers absolution by horizon. The closer the edge, the less the room must be just. It is not a conspiracy, it is a comfort loop programmed by fear and monetized by elegance. Break the loop by forfeiting the pleasures it supplies, the clock that makes you feel necessary, the purity that makes you feel clean, the prophecy that makes you feel special, the consolation that makes you feel exempt. Philosophically, Apocalypse Wellness is a refusal of history, the arena where imperfect creatures do arithmetic with suffering and manage to keep something alive. It replaces history with destiny, and destiny is always suspiciously sympathetic to our temperament. Dharma belongs to history. It refuses to hallucinate a finale that redeems our laziness. It asks for conduct without crescendo, repair without camera, truth without audience, vow without violin. It is not anti-apocalypse, it is anti-shortcut. If the world ends tomorrow, ethics do not. They never did. They were the small, bright stubbornness by which people made dwellings under empires, under floods, under kings. If the world does not end, ethics will still be the only thing that keeps your rooms from turning into stages where fear buys seats and leaves unchanged. This is the only scandal that matters. We are responsible either way. Catastrophe is not an alibi. Serenity is not a receipt. So let this be the last advertisement I ever record. Put out the fire you are selling. Stand in rooms where clocks are banned and minutes are taken. Speak sentences that can be checked. Choose neighbors over narratives. Refuse to be interesting when being useful would save someone. If you need a prophecy, here is mine. The future will not make you honest, only now will you are bored, because honesty is slower than apocalypse. Endure the boredom. It is how grown beings keep houses from burning. If your Dharma needs the world to end to feel true, it isn't Dharma. It's a siren, I'm silent flame. Turn off the siren or stop calling it salvation.